Hello everyone, this is Pal Ponder on Weather coming at you with another update. In this update, we're going to be talking about a historic winter storm with an ice storm, heavy snow, and record cold. So before I do get started, if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. And I do ask you to share this video with your friends and family on social media, right? So let's get started. Here is Monday morning, February the 15th, and we've got record cold temperatures to waking up to in a good chunk of the United States, from Minnesota all the way down to Brownsville. All these blues and light blues are daily record colds, and all these blacks here are either tying or breaking an all-time record low temperature this morning. This is historic, folks, and it's dipping all the way down into the deep south, covering a huge area of the country. And I think it even gets worse tomorrow morning as we really max out and get dangerously cold, and we're already dangerously cold. Your wind chills currently are upwards to 40 and 50 below zero for a good chunk of the northern central U.S., and those dangerously cold wind chills extend all the way down to the deep south. I mean, 27 below zero wind chill in Oklahoma. That is some serious stuff. I mean, 25 below in Amarillo, 16 below in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Even negatives all the way down to the coastline of Texas. This is historic stuff. And in fact, they're having rolling blackouts in Texas right now. It's getting serious, folks. I mean, folks have been out of power for 4 hours, and this is only the first day of it, and we still have another 4 or 5 days. We're going to be maxing out the power grid as this just covers a huge area of the country. And it's just not a good setup, because I mean, we've got numerous winter storm warnings going into effect, because we still have that first system that we're going to be dealing with, and yet we have another system back behind that. So all these pinks are winter storm warnings setting up for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, going into western Tennessee, all of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, going into Kentucky, and then they're dealing with ice storm as well. So it's just not a pretty setup as this continues to move up the coastline. So let me go over the scenario and how all this is going to play out over the surface map just over the next 5 days. So they had a lot of snow in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think they ended up with 4.1 inches overnight. There were sporadic reports of 7 inches, and then out west there were probably 9 to 10 inches, but a good swath in Texas, I mean, got snow overnight, and still snowing all the way down to the deep south this morning. That snow continues to move off into the northeast. Now we're dealing with some ice, unfortunately, into Louisiana, Mississippi, going into western parts of Tennessee, as this goes back into Kentucky now, where they've got that ice storm warning. And then just on the northern fringe, I mean, we're seeing heavy snow in Arkansas, setting up into southern Missouri, going into Illinois, into Indiana and Ohio again. And this continues to move up the coast. We've got all rain to the southeast, where we've got a ridge kind of building in and moving in, along with a kind of a warm front. And unfortunately, we'll be dealing with some severe threat in central parts of Florida, and just some heavy flooding rain going into portions of the southeast as this continues to move up to the northeast, where that Bear Clinic zone is. They've got that warmer air aloft. That's where you see the transition into more of a freezing rain threat on right along that boundary line, and then all snow to the north. And you could be picking up some healthy amounts into Illinois, going into especially Indiana and Ohio, as this continues moving up the coast, and Pennsylvania, going into New York by then. And then we'll start to see some snow showers entering New England as well, as this continues to move up the coast. Now you're getting some heavier snow into Michigan. So especially on the south side, you're going to be picking up some of your higher amounts. And then this will continue moving up the coast right along. And then in fact, more kind of a mixed bag of lake effect snow as well in portions like Cleveland, Ohio, getting into Buffalo, all these along the Great Lakes. And as this continues moving up, unfortunately, we'll be having kind of a mixed bag as that ridge continues to try to build in across the I-95 corridor of mixed bag in, say, in New Jersey, Philly, New York City, going up to into Boston. We're going to be seeing some, unfortunately, kind of a freezing rain, sleet, and then it'll transition to all snow once we get into the higher upstate New York, going into Vermont, New Hampshire, especially into Maine. It'll be all snow for you guys as this continues moving up the coast. But back behind it, that's that first system that will move through, and then back behind it, yeah, we're looking at more dangerously cold. I think this is when you're going to max out as, some of your historic low temperatures. I mean, look, for these are actual temperatures coming up for Tuesday morning, the 16th. And we've got widespread 20 below zero negative temperatures, even down to teens below in much of Oklahoma, negatives in Arkansas, even negatives in North Texas, extending all the way down into central Texas. This is some dangerous folks, guys, and stuff, guys. And then that's why they're having just a lot of power grid issues for the deep south, is just these areas are just not used to this extended cold for this period of time. And unfortunately, we have several more days that we're going to have to be dealing with. So do what you can to conserve heat, power, keep your phones charged, keep all the blinds closed, curtains. Do what you can to trap the heat inside your house, because yeah, we've got some serious, dangerously cold wind chills coming up on Tuesday morning. Not just the temperatures I showed you, but feels like extending all the way down to the deep south, even portions of Houston and Louisiana and Mississippi, getting into Alabama. I mean, this is some dangerous folks, guys, and just covering. I've never seen, this just covering such a huge swath of real estate at one extended time for the duration of the event, because we have yet another system back behind that one we're going to have to be dealing with. So by the time we get into the afternoon on Tuesday, this first system will continue to lift off, dumping some of those heavier snows into New England. And then we have yet another system where, just when that first system, like Seattle, places like in Seattle had like 14 inches of snow from that first system. But then we have that second system that's coming through, dumping more heavier snows in the Pacific Northwest. That will extend into the Four Corners region. Places in Utah got like 8 inches of snow with the first system. That will start to dive down into New Mexico, and then it'll eventually start getting into Texas again by the time we get into the early morning hours of Wednesday, the 17th, with some more heavy snow into Oklahoma, Kansas, getting into portions of Missouri by then. And unfortunately, we have some warm air convection coming in off that second system, and it's going to be more of a mixed bag of sleet, unfortunately, setting up going into portions of central Texas. And this will just intensify as this continues to progress further east. And I'm very concerned of a significant ice threat setting up for just south maybe of the DFW Metroplex, going into East Texas, going into Shreveport, where they could have a damaging, if not almost crippling, ice storm in those areas. And look, more heavy snow for North Texas, getting into Dallas, and that will extend into portions of Oklahoma, especially like southeastern Oklahoma. Some of your heavier banding will move across into Little Rock, Arkansas. I mean, Little Rock is expected to get upwards to 18, almost 2 feet of snow, as you're kind of in a prime setup with these two systems coming across into western portions of Tennessee, get into western portions of Kentucky as this continues lifted off into the northeast. And unfortunately, this system is almost kind of the same line as the first system, maybe about another 100 miles further north. As this ridge continues to try to build in and sneak in more warmer air. And that's why this transition of more of a mixed bag of rain and sleet and ice again for a lot of the same areas are going to be hit with the first storm. So there's actually no break with these two systems. It's kind of a back-to-back unfortunate scenario. And then as this continues to dip down, We could be looking at more like rain, especially like snow on this banding, even more ice possibly into places of Houston, getting into Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama again. And then unfortunately, more ice, another potentially ice storm setting up for Virginia, going into West Virginia, DC, Baltimore, getting into possibly Jersey, filtering in. Then on the north side, some of your heavier snows are going to be mixed in. So it's just going to be an ugly scenario as this continues to lift off into the northeast. And as this continues, some of your heavier snows are going to be more or less to the upper regions of Ohio, getting into portions of Pennsylvania into New York. So as this continues lifting across Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, going into Vermont, New Hampshire, some of your heavier snows and almost a foot of snow in those areas. And I'll show you some of the totals at the end. But yeah, we could be getting some very heavy snow by then around this banding and portions of Michigan. We'll have some sporadic snows in Wisconsin, and then this will continue lifting off, dumping some of your bullseye snows in Indiana and Ohio, and then along the lakes you'll have a combination of some those heavier snows with those two systems, but also lake effect. So I do expect, especially along the lakes, some of your heavier snows upwards to 2 feet cannot be ruled out over the next 5 days with these two systems. They're going to be coming across. And by the time we get into Friday morning, the 19th, we're still going to be dealing with that second system that'll kind of start to ring itself out, but start lifting off into the northeast, and then snow on the backside. But some of these snowfall totals are pretty impressive. So I kind of split it up between the west, the central, and the east. So here's the western part of the U.S. As these systems kind of traverse across around the northwest, cross-polar flow setup, we'll have more of a push because we'll have that Pacific jet start to coming in. So you'll transition to more of a rain on the coastal regions. But where that colder air will start to really start to dive in with that, Siberian Express that we're working with right now, we'll start to see some of those heavier snows more inland into Washington, Oregon, Idaho, getting into Nevada, Utah with some double-digit totals, going to Wyoming, and then sporadic into the Four Corners regions of New Mexico. And then we start to pick it up that Gulf moisture into Texas again. I do think for this second feature, we might tend to dry out more like in West Texas, but then that heavier banding will pick back up again with some more snow, possibly another 4 to 8 inches right along the DFW Metroplex, and then heavier snows as you get to the northeast. But even down towards the south here, they'll still include all the way down the deep south of Austin, San Antonio, portions of Houston. We'll still look at those snowfall totals, combination from that first event. But this pink swath, this is when your heavier set up for snow, anywhere from 12 to possibly 18 inches in this banding right here from Arkansas to Missouri to Oklahoma. As we get into western parts of Tennessee, into Illinois, into Indiana, and then as we get up the coastline into the northeast, that snow will have, some of your heavier snows will be on the south side, probably a foot plus in Michigan, and as we can all the way to the north side, not much of anything. So there's definitely, we're along that banding, but here's where the setup could be of your highest totals with the combination of those both events and the lake effect of upwards to 20 plus inches right around these lake regions. And as this continues to traverse across, you can see some of these higher amounts of 8 to 10, if not upwards to 2 feet once you get into the interior regions. But down towards the coast, it's more of a mixed bag of sleet, freezing rain, and then yes, you will have some snow to work with from 3 to 6 inches. Long Island, New Jersey, get into Boston, places maybe like in Philly, but more in the interior regions. Heavier amounts as you go further inland, especially as you go into places like Bangor, could be picking up another 8 inches, and then going into Caribou, double digit totals as we continue lifting off into the northeast. And yeah, you're gonna have to be dealing with sleet, unfortunately, as well. So it's a three-pronged approach with this. I mean, you got dangerously cold temperatures, you got you got snow covering a huge swath of the country, and then your ice threat is a huge concern as well, but all the way down into the deep south of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, along that banding. So it's just a mixed bag in Tennessee and Kentucky, going into West Virginia, going up the coast of New England, and then your freezing rain, your ice threat is going to be devastating for portions of the South along that banding line of central Texas, going into eastern Texas, especially places like Shreveport, Lake Charles, Louisiana, going into Mississippi, portions of northwestern Alabama, western parts of Tennessee. Kentucky is going to be inundated with ice again, unfortunately, as this comes up the coast to Virginia, West Virginia, and then getting into Pennsylvania. All along these states up in the northeast and New England will be a setup for freezing rain, sleet, and snow with this system. And then on the south side, it's more of a flood threat. So you got severe weather still possibly happening in central Florida. They've had several tornado warnings over the last several days in that area. And as this continues traversing across along that warm front, you'll have some of your heavier rains of 1, 2, if not upwards to 3 or 4 inches still to come, and portions of, Georgia going into the Carolinas, and then all on the coast. So there's plenty of available precipitation to work with, and it's all coming from the Pacific Northwest as this continues to traverse across and has a very active pattern over the next 5 days. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Definitely be safe out there. I know this is extremely dangerous situation for many, so do what you can to keep warm and just stay home if all possible. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after storm.